Welcome back, and you are still watching My Story here at Church of Uganda Family TV. And today we are truly blessed to have Reverend Canon Gideon Byamugisha, who is telling us his story, what he went through, and where he is now. So far, we have heard from him that he declared himself positive, and what the impacts were is what we are diving into now. Canon, what are the reactions immediately after you declared yourself positive?
The reactions, I would group them into three. There were people who were shocked, but supportive. Like I've already said, it was terrible news. It was tough news. They were struggling with, so how will people look at us as church, as Christians, or as family? But that perplexity was, peppered with love and support and compassion. Then there was another group that reacted very angrily. The anger could show. Why is he shaming the church? He should leave, he should, and then there were those who didn't care. In every situation, there are those who are, that's your business.
Okay.
So my luck, like my name suggests, Byamugisha means blessing. My blessing came from the fact that those who reacted with love became so many more than those who reacted with hate. And that's the genesis of Friends of Canon Gideon Foundation.
Okay.
Originally, it was Friends of Gideon Fellowship, because when I became publicly open, I was not a canon.
Okay.
So it became Friends of Gideon Fellowship. People who would meet to pray with me, care, ask what can we do. There were no ARVs at that time for me, so they would just offer love and prayer, as is needed. And that helped a lot for me to cope, for me to continue asking God how I can do ministry in such a situation.
Yes.
I didn't tell you that I nearly refused ordination, really, when Bishop Eustace Ruhindi, on the retreat, after the retreat, you are given a one-to-one meeting with the bishop to finalize, to say, are you still interested? What is God saying? And when I reached there, I said, I don't feel like I want to be ordained, because they've told me my wife died of AIDS. Now, what will I preach? Because at that time, remember, AIDS was associated with immorality, with sin, sexual sin, and all the negatives. So, and then I'm telling Eustace, like, so what am I going to do? So he says, he prays with me and says, go and think about it, mwana wanje. Go and think about it with God. He calls everyone. So,
and don't you get stigma from fellows, like it is you're soon being ordained? Don't you get pressure from other people? Don't go for this, like other people having negativity on you?
No, remember, when I'm being ordained, I've not tested for HIV.
Okay.
My wife died in April. We graduated in June. I started teaching in August. And, I am being ordained in December. And so that's those things are happening. And then I'm coming from the ordination to testing. Yeah, so people they are still sympathizing with me. You lost your wife, sorry, Okay. Yeah, except the few who knew the story. They are not even there. It was only my family that had the news that pneumonia is related to HIV. Okay. But it's not yet public, because I'm not talking. How do you talk about you yourself when you have not tested? Yeah. So that morning of ordination, a gentleman comes from Kasese and says, I'm looking for someone I don't know, but his name, God has said, is Byamugisha, and given me a message to take. And they said, oh, those are at Makobale High School in a retreat. And he reaches, and then he finds me. I was staying with a canon, Kamutera, and he delivers, he says, God has given me, and I look, and he has a small piece of paper written on 2 Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 1 to 17. And I read the first 2 verses, and the verse is saying, you have been given this ministry out of mercy. I didn't read it more, I just got my cassock and I rushed, because they were already in the procession entering the cathedral.
You had already given them.
Yeah, I was. So I found them on the line, joining. My best man of the new marriage in Canon Everett. We were in the same, that was the same day. And I entered and got convicted direct from God's message. So fast forward, I test, I'm positive, and people are now divided. But I am sure, because I had got that confidence that this is a calling from God. And he's giving me this ministry out of mercy, that I should also preach mercy, preach forgiveness, preach grace, preach love. And I entered. So the people who reacted badly, too bad for them, I continued ministering with those who loved me. Of course, at campus, at Bishop Tucker, the people begin getting uneasy. Is he the right person to be on staff? So that influences my leaving. No one chased me, but I felt the uneasiness. So I went to Makerere University to do my master's in curriculum development. In my second year, the Church of Uganda province advertises a program, CHUSA, Church of Uganda Human Services, and they want to start AIDS ministry, and they are looking for people who can train. And I look at the new vision, I'm like, this is my job, So I got my professor Odayat and explain, and he says, no, this master's you can always pick up anytime. Go and do what you feel called to do. So I went. A lot of people were being interviewed, but finally they shortlisted 8, and then finally they picked 4 of us. And so I left Mukono, went to Dag, now ended in the Archbishop's office as an HIV/AIDS education trainer, which I did for 2 years, actually, before the program got challenges and was disbanded. But in there, again, you reach a place, because we had 5 dioceses we were working in: Mitiana, Bunyoro, Chitara, Lango, Mbale, Kampala. So you reach there and you are giving your story, and people are reacting, I think I am causing people really to talk, because I am telling my story. I am Gideon Byamugisha, I am HIV positive. And they are like, is he lying? Is it true? If it is true, why is he still in the corner? Then the young girls would put me in a corner and say, wait a minute, so Kolinde kwao. You are young, you are handsome, you are educated, and you are born again. Those are the qualities of people we are looking for to get married. Now you are putting a roadblock that you are positive. You don't look like you are positive. You don't look like you have AIDS. And I'm begin explaining, AIDS and HIV are different, but some of them became so serious, and they would follow me up, at my home, and so things became complicated. And that's when I knelt again. I said, God, now you take over. And that's how the idea of getting a woman who is positive and widowhood came. First of all, to save these girls from infection, but also to protect my salvation journey. And thank God again that happened. But it divided the church also. There were people who were saying, no, we can't marry positive people.
Like, was there a rule on that, or
You
just
can't.
assumptions
It
for
was.
themselves?
I think there were two assumptions that those people who are positive and have sex, they die young. They die early. There was, I think, that suspicion that maybe there is a way your infection. Then the others are struggling with: are you Christian enough? Are you Christian enough to merit a Christian wedding?
Okay.
So those who are struggling, remember, AIDS is being connected to immorality. So there is this reverend who is positive and has a positive woman, and they want to get, a very complicated story. It's so this story is really not for Gideon. This story is for the whole faith community. How we have, and when you look these 5 decades, you can really see responses. You could see the 1981, 91 lost decade. People are not talking about it. 92 to 20 to 2000, people are beginning to get aware. That is when I'm opening up. Then in the next decade, people are saying, hey, we must do something. The last decade we have finished, people are saying, oh, we must perfect our response. Now, glad we are talking about the last mile, but it has been a difficult journey.
Wow.
So I divided the church, but the people who support me become more. I leave Church of Uganda, province, the Archbishop's office. I come to Namirembe Diocese. And there another miracle happens again. I meet Bishop Samuel Sekade for the first time, saying I've been working in the Archbishop's office, but the project ended prematurely. I'm looking for where to work, where to serve. And he says, what would you want to do? I said, I give him my papers, and he said, oh, you can go to teach in Namugongo Matters Seminary. So I accept and I appreciate and then leave. And then the Holy Spirit says, okay. You've not confessed, you've not walked in right. And the other one is saying, no, if you tell him, he will not give you the job. Please tell him. I struggle, and then finally, of course, the Holy Spirit wins. I come back, I tell him, and he responds with love and grace.
Wow.
And he says, young man, you are meeting me for the first time, and you are opening up. And from today, you are my own son. Now, love in another gear. I become, from being a son of a Mubulizi, I become a son of a bishop.
Wow.
And he says, I will nurse you. And he says, come over. You live even in the Namugongo job. Come and work with me in the office. And he gives me a job to head HIV/AIDS programs in the diocese. And we work, we minister. Again, the same opposition. Those who say, yes, God has given us the prophet we have been waiting for, who can help us break the stigma, and the others are like, akorachi that type of thing. Yes. So my life has been that spiritual struggle, moral struggle, ecclesiastical struggle of people saying, is he good enough? Should we love him like we love others? And again, lessons have been there to say that, if God accepts all of us, why shouldn't we accept even those who are HIV positive? And Namirembe Diocese took the lead to show the world how you can defeat AIDS with love. And in the years I worked there, we did a lot of work in the parishes. We were the first, actually. The church was the first, Namirembe Diocese was the first to take the TASO model into the parishes to test people there and create post-test clubs where they can share positive living and so forth. That model was implemented first in the Namirembe Diocese, and that's where now the international ministry started from. People would come to Namirembe to say, Jangu Ewafe, come to Ghana, come to Nigeria, come to, and I did that. And when I was introducing myself in those countries, which are about 60 of them now, every time I would introduce myself, people would say, oh, we have brought you Reverend Gideon Canon after 2001. He's the first religious leader in Africa to disclose his HIV status. Now, at first, I warm up to the introduction. The first. Oh, yeah, I'm the first.
Okay.
But later on, I say, wait a minute. This has gone on for 3 years now. First. Where is the second? Where is the third? Am I the odd man out? Or are they there and they are dying in shame in being discriminated, excluded? So I got this burden, spiritual burden, pastoral burden, to look for my friends. And in 2001, we held a retreat in Zimbabwe, and I got friends. We were 64 in the conference. 8 people said we are HIV positive. Actually 7, because the 8th tested positive in the conference. And from there we formed our network, African network of religious leaders living with or personally affected by HIV. Now it's no longer African network, it is international network of religious leaders living with or personally affected by HIV. We are 13,000 members in 25 countries.
Wow.
So when you hear
a great
Unerera, that is Uganda network. Tanerera, that is Tanzania.
Okay.
Bunerera,
Burundi.
Rwanerera,
Rwanda.
Okay. Ninerera,
Nigeria.
Wow, you got it. So we have 25 of those. Okay. And I am, when Archbishop Desmond Tutu was their patron, was our patron, and when he died, they asked me, you are the founder, can you give me the second patron? So I'm now the patron of the network.
So, Canon, when do you start Canon Gideon Foundation?
1992.
Still?
Yes. I've told you it was a nucleus of family and friends. Family of John Bernard Agarakabire and the family of Muzei Mutegaya, where Kellen was born. And then our friends, we form Friends of Gideon Fellowship to support me and care for me. Now in 2001, I become Canon, but also I get an award from Bob, from World Vision International, called Bob Pius Award. It's an award they give for distinguished Christian service. And it had $5,000 as cash prize. It was my first time to get dollars, and So I tell my wife, what did we do? At first, we attempted to think about using the money to build the retreat center. But the other one says no. You've looked at AIDS, you've seen how it works. The young people who are dropping out of school are more vulnerable to AIDS than those who continue in school. So we get convicted to start an institute for training young people who are called NEET. Have you heard of that word? NEET. Not in education, not in employment, and not in training. NEET. Okay. So we look at that, and then we want to give the money to Friends of Gideon Fellowship, and they can't use it because they are not registered. So it's that money now that causes the chairman, who was Reverend Canon Sam Rutikara, who was my boss at the province, is the chairperson of Friends of Forgife, Friends of Gideon Fellowship, and his board, they decided to register, but because now I am a canon, it becomes Friends of Canon Gideon Foundation.
So what does
and then they use the money to start for Kagifo Hope Institute.
So what are some of the impacts we can account for the Friends of Gideon Foundation?
Oh, impact.
Yes.
First of all, what you are seeing.
Yes.
That
I want someone else there to also know
yes, that they have love of friends have worked with love of God. The two. You know, God says, you are my foot, you are my heart, you know. So he uses our love as a raw material to work miracles. So I am a miracle of God through friends. I was supposed to be dead in 1998, by the way. 98, I got advanced AIDS.
Okay.
I had all symptoms of advanced AIDS except meningitis. And the friends, led by my bishop of Namirembe by then, Bishop Samuel, they led the campaign to bring medicine. And I started taking medicine. By 2001, I had recovered. And, you know, then 2015, I got diagnosed with cancer, stage 3. Again, people said, oh, he's dying now. The friends again intervened, mobilized money. I got surgery, went to India for 6 months, got enough treatment. Here I am now. So friends have prolonged my life, but also friends have helped me to participate in the national and global campaign to fight AIDS, and to be able to bring in, so what can the faith community do? You can see how Namirembe Diocese and the province of the Church of Uganda lent me as a resource to other faith communities who have done this work of supporting faith communities to overcome stigma in 60 countries, without counting how many times you have gone back, 3, 4, 5, like Nigeria, where you have been like 15 times, or South Africa. Those countries that are very burdened with not only AIDS, but the stigma that makes AIDS more deadly. So that has been a contribution that first, the friends keep you alive and healthy enough to do ministry, supported by the faith communities, my archbishops. All of them have been excellent. The current one, the Right Reverend, the Most Reverend Dr. Stephen Kazimba, very, very supportive. Even when he was in Mitiana, he would invite me every December to go and do ministry with young people there. So once you are loved, you know, friends of Canon Gideon have proved one thing, that once you love people who are positive, not only do they live longer and productive lives, they also join the national and local community prevention efforts against AIDS. You are talking to someone who has lived with HIV for 31 years, then knowing, not when I got infected, but the time I knew, 31 years. And in that time, no person in the world has my virus.
Wow.
Talk about zero transmission. And you can't achieve that successfully without support from friends, without accountability to your God, to your neighbor, and to yourself, and without access to medical services. So these 5 things have to work together. 1, belief in God, strong belief in God. 2, strong love from family. 3, strong love from your faith community, which Namirembe Diocese and the province of the Church of Uganda has done. 4, access to medicines, and 5, your place of work.
Wow.
So those, once you have that, you achieve what Gideon has achieved, that you can achieve 0 transmission, 0 AIDS death, you live long. Right now, for example, I'm not scared of dying of AIDS. I'm scared of dying of other comorbidities. But with HIV, unless government decides we have given you enough medicine, now we are concentrating on other things. But if we continue getting the ARVs as we get them, you can see that love can defeat AIDS.
Yeah, I always pay attention to what Bishop Wilberforce in his teachings. He always says that seasons come, seasons go, and people come, people go. So in case you've left this world, what are some of the legacies you feel you've left behind, and people will always sing to this?
Maybe that is for people to say. That's for people to say, because we've done a lot with people and with God. Like I've said, I have a school, the institute. We started an institute. We graduate every year. We graduate like 200 people. We have now probably graduated 3,000 plus young people who would have fallen out of school after P7 or after senior 4, and who knows the vulnerability could have made them HIV positive, and if they are positive, they could have, the vulnerability could make them infect others. But because of the support, the 2 years we give them here, later sente zolina ffe tukongerezeko, and we train you. And those 2 years, someone lives with vocational skills, spirituality skills, health skills. How do you remain negative when you are negative? How do you achieve 0 transmission if you are positive, and live long and become a professor like Canon Gideon? I was, when I knew I was HIV positive, I had only 2 degrees. Now I have 5. So you can see how the impact you can cause by community keeping you alive, and people looking at you and saying, oba yakikola nange nyinza kukikola, and then that impact. The other one is, of course, on supporting the faith community to look at this disease with more inclusive, more analytical eyes. That before, when it came, we said this is a punishment from God. Gideon worked with the faith communities to say, really, if it is a punishment from God, why is it that the most religious continent in the world is the most infected? And we began looking at that, and we discovered it was not a punishment from God. It was more to deal with how we lead and govern ourselves as persons, as families, as communities, and as countries. That this is a governance, a self-governance issue. How you mobilize yourself. Then we looked at the ABC. I worked with the faith community to analyze at the abstain if you can't, be faithful if you can't, use condoms if you can't, die. It was that. And we looked at that, and then we looked at the challenges with it, the strengths with it, and together we created a better framework that keeps the strength of ABC and addresses its weaknesses. And now we talk about the SAVE approach that we work. That's a legacy that people will look back and say. Actually, there are about 3 people who have done PhDs on that framework, and that is there. The other one is, of course, looking at the whole perspective of helping the faith community to say, look, stigma is the one frustrating us, and helping faith communities to put their eyes on that, to say God has given us enough science to defeat this epidemic. But if we can look at how our faith, how our spirituality, how our ethics is driving the stigma, and the stigma driving the inequality of access, again, probably people will look at that and say, okay, he helped us with the theological ethics on how to respond better. Right now, we are working on something called HIV positive theology. How do continents that are most impacted by HIV interpret their relationship with God and the neighbors? The person is living with HIV, the family is living with HIV, the young people, like for example the adolescents, whom they have told that the girls are more times infected than the boys. How do you interpret that using that lens? In 2001, I was the chairman of a technical working group that produced the first ever action plan for faith communities. The government of Uganda, through Uganda's commission, appointed me to lead a group that helped to bring this, and we are following it. The whole country, the Interreligious Council, led by Interreligious Council and Uganda's commission, it's helping to galvanize the efforts of the faith communities to respond better to HIV. So maybe people bagamba, tosobola okukola engoma ate n'ozina. So that issue of legacy, I leave it to you, and I leave it to my children and my family and my faith community to look and say, how did God help us to utilize Gideon? What contribution did Gideon make in the response? And of course, as a human being, they will say, oh, he failed here, he succeeded there. But for me, I feel like I've done what I could have done with the type of love that I got. The only challenge is that sometimes when I read the Bible, that Jesus gave a parable about those who was given 5 and they made it 10. 5 talents became 10.
And when
the one of 2 made it 4. The one of 1 just kept it. I am sure I'm not the one with 1 because I have done a lot. But my challenge has always been, do I have 5 and I am serving as if I have 2? Or do I have 2 and I'm serving as if I have 5? In other words, am I doing more or am I underutilizing? The same question that you would ask the church, for example, that when you look at the AIDS response, are we using our 5 talents as if we have 2? Have we exhausted our spiritual power, our moral power, our ecclesiastical power, our pastoral power to bear on this problem? Because science is enough, and we have seen we can defeat the virus.
Okay, now, Canon, what is your favorite verse in the Bible?
My favorite verse
in the Bible?
Only one.
Yes, one. Yes. Because of time, actually. Only one.
Romans 13:8.
Wow.
If you have any debt with anyone, let it be the debt of love.
Wow. And what is, I understand you were in the choir sometime back. What is your favorite hymn?
In Runyankole or in Uganda?
Okay, across.
Across?
Your best,
okay, best. My favorite verse is now, hymn is Ruganda, 19:3, Katonda omugabi w'ebirabo.
You were in a choir. I know you can.
Naye chirabo cho tuchetaga echisinge biraro bulungi kwe kwagalanga bwotwagala.
Wow. So, Canon, thank you for that good voice. You see, there are people who say they are from choirs, but you tell them to go live on singing, things totally change. But thank you for that. So, as we conclude, we really appreciate it for your time and all that. Please give us some word, the last remarks to our viewer out there.
Because he lives, we can face tomorrow. Because he lives, we can defeat the virus. Because he lives, we can do much more than we are doing. Because he lives, I have no fear of tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds my future. And life is worthy living just because he lives. And because I love it so much, I translated it in my language.
Oh, okay.
No hulire mwenu tinchitina. No hulire tinchitina. Aha kuba niwanyebembera. Magara ganje gamuhimbise nohurire.
Wow. Thank you so much, Canon. This has been Canon, Reverend Canon Gideon Byamugisha, of course, sharing his story. It has been an interesting one. Of course, one thing you should do in life, never give up on yourself, because he almost did, but see what he is now. Who would be this? No one would know. But because he fought and he lived to that, because he lives, as he has also concluded with, the Lord lives. He is always by your side. So please never give up upon your life. And that has been my story, not my story. My story, the program. Of course, it has been Reverend Canon Gideon Byamugisha's story to inspire someone out there. And of course, we look up to the next day. Jonan Owakavi has been on camera with Linda Dina, and of course, Collins. My name has been Luke Majumba Alenaito, and thank you for watching. Hello and welcome once again to another interesting episode of My Story, a program here at Church of Uganda Family TV that tracks, traces, and brings to you stories of individual people who have made it in life. Basically, on how did they start up, what did they go through, and what did it take them to go through what they did. And of course, every Sunday here at Church of Uganda Family TV, we bring to you special guests. And today, I cannot wait to unveil for you what we brought for you. So we believe such stories can bring an impact out there in the society, and someone is touched and maybe changes, because people tend to give up in life. But when you hear such stories, what comes to your life, of course, after them giving us what they went through and things like that. Never give up in life is what, of course, we advocate for here. My name is Luke Majumba Alenaito, and I'm sitting in for Edrin Austin Mukalazi for this show specifically. And today, I'm blessed to have a very special person here. Of course, he has a very bold story, very bold background, very bold biography. I wouldn't want to dilute it. But Reverend Canon Gideon Byamugisha, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Luke.
Please, you can greet the viewer out there.
Oh, praise the living God. Our God is good all the time, and all the time is good. I'm glad to be hosted at the Family TV, our TV.
Interesting. So, Reverend Canon, I want us to go back to life. Who is Gideon before even being Reverend Canon? So, that young person, where do you begin from? Where are you born from?
I'm born in Ndorwa County, that is in Kigezi, which is now Kabale. I am a Murihira, if we go by clan, among the Bachiga, from Buranga, Chichumbi, and I was born to a Mubulizi
Oh,
umubuulizi w'ekkanisa.
I think that should be inspiring your journey.
Yeah, umubuulizi John Bernard Karakabire, he's now late.
Oh, may his soul rest in peace.
But my mom, Christine, is alive. Christine Mary.
Alive?
Yes.
At how old?
Well, she's going towards 80, towards her 90s now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a good age. Okay.
I was born on 29th August, 1959.
Okay.
So I am looking forward to celebrating my 65 years retirement.
Okay.
Next year in August.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
What else? I am a firstborn by accident because
Why by accident?
because the firstborn died.
Oh.
Yes.
Sorry.
And then I followed. And then the one who following me also died. So I am an island. And then after that, we are 10 surviving siblings.
Okay.
So I'm the eldest now in the family. And the youngest is also there. She's called Ruth Ninsima.
Okay. How is your youthful age? How can you explain your youthful age when you were still a youth?
My youth, let's talk about childhood first. That the circumstances in which I was born also influenced what happened later on. That when I was born, I only suckled my mother for 4 months.
Oh.
Yes, and when they say when you don't suckle your mom enough, it opens up immunity challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, so I began falling sick very early, and at the age of 2 I became very, very sick, and then they took me to Bwama, a medical hospital that was in charge of treating people with leprosy. And when on the way towards there, the boat got challenges, and I fell in the water. When I use the word drown, people say, but you can't drown and you're alive. But that is what happened. I fell in the water, but on the third beat, when the water would take you and then bring you, and then my mother grabbed me, and
Such a hero.
yeah, she removed the waters, and then we proceeded to Bwama, but I became very sick there, and they gave me, I am told I got so many injections, but it didn't improve, and they said, you better take this child to die at home. And we left. My mother said we left, and when we reached, she began crying, but my grandmother was saved of the revival movement. Yonia began praying and saying, God, I am tired of the cries of my daughter. I really want you to reveal yourself about the future of this boy, the fate of this boy. And I'm told the angel came to where she was praying from and said, go and tell your daughter to stop crying, because this boy is not going to die.
Wow.
Except the one following him.
It was a sacrifice?
I don't know. I don't know how to interpret that. He's not going to die. He's going to live, and he will be a church teacher like his father. But the one following him will die. And so I'm telling you that to see that God's interventions in situations, or God's revelations, can also shape the destiny of people. Because even when I tried to dodge ministry,
You had to find yourself there.
would come back. So my youth days really were enjoyable, I would say, because I grew up in a family of born-again faith. My mother, my father, all of us, in the home. I actually began reading the Bible before I started school.
Oh,
Yes.
that is good.
I began reading prayers, reading the Bible, singing the hymns. So that was my life, enjoying life.
How about this other life? Youth are known for specific things like
Maybe sports. I
drugs,
loved football.
Oh,
I
that's
loved
nice.
football. Up to now, I am a goalkeeper.
You support Arsenal?
Before I know Manchester United, you can see all in the viewers. Yeah, so we are not doing well these days, but the Archbishop will forgive me because for him is Arsenal. Yeah, so I did sport, but also volleyball, and yeah, that's my youthhood. At O level and A level, I was the goalkeeper for my schools, Makobore High School and Makerere College. I was goalkeeping for them. Even when I went to Makerere, I became a goalkeeper for Livingstone. Except when I got someone who challenged me. He's called Dronyi. I think now he's a doctor. And I gave up because once you get someone who is better, you
talked about
back.
joining. You were in a choir.
Yes, I used to sing. Scripture Union. Even at campus, I was in a Froston choir fellowship. So music has always been part of, and when I look back, it has been a part of my spirituality. First of all, music introduced me to Christ when I got saved in senior 3. It was when I sang that song, Akija, okwihira neira lyona yesa kabaryo mwiguru yarugayo yejo munsi okujuna banyabibi, and it touched me, and when you follow the hymns, and I'm like, this person, I deserve to be his friend.
Yes.
So I gave up my life to him. So even up to now, I get my spirituality, most of it, more from hymns than from live sermons. Yeah.
Okay. So can we now look at this exact moment that hit your heart and you're like, now let me give my life to Christ?
It's not a magic moment. Actually, for me, I'm one of the very few people who derive happiness in that first moment. No, as I told you, I grew up, living a Christian life. But in senior 3, I felt I should not just be a good Christian. I should be a born again Christian. But still, that did not define me to say, okay, that's a distinct time. And I always tell people that I was saved, I am being saved, I hope to be saved. So I work on my salvation. So there was no distinct circumstances that compelled me to give my life to Christ. It was just that to feel, Gideon, you have been a good Christian, but good Christianity will not take you to heaven. You need to open up and confess and accept the Lord as your Savior. And I do that all the time. Go back, repent, ask for forgiveness, and continue my journey.
So how about, when do you join family?
Pardon?
Family, when do you get a family?
Oh, the family. I finished studies at Makerere. I go to teach. And there in Ruyonza school, I meet my sweetheart called Kellen. The parents are from Kabohe. And we get married in 1987. And then we produced together a child called Patience in 1990. And then in 1991, when we are planning to go for my PhD in the University of Cardiff. She dies suddenly. And then I am back to square one. And then later on in 1992, towards the end of 1991, I learned that the pneumonia that killed her was related to HIV. Okay. So I go and test immediately after my ordination. I was ordained in December 13th, 1991. So in January, I came to Kampala and did the tests, and I was HIV positive. That interfered with my immediate remarrying because now the circumstances had changed. Yes. And I had to be careful on who to marry and when and how. So I began now in a search of a woman who would be HIV positive like me and widowed like me, and that took a process. So I didn't marry until 1995 when I got a suitable partner called Pamela, my wife now. Okay. And then we married on 28th July 1995 in St. Andrews, Bukoto, by the Canon George Katwesigye, who became the bishop of Kigezi. And now he's retired also. But because Pamela and I are positive, we can't produce children without putting them at risk. So we agree with Pamela that we are going to postpone having children in our marriage until God works out a miracle. Okay. That miracle takes 7 years to make. In 2000, Professor Miro begins talking about with the science that can prevent positive parents passing on the virus to their babies. We listen, and we get our first baby in 2001. And my wife gets excited because she didn't have children from the first marriage, and then asks whether we could have another baby, and of course I said I'm at your service. Yeah. And we asked God, and He allowed us to have a second baby in 2003, and that is the story. So I am a remarried pastor with 3 children: patience, love, and hope.
Yeah, that is interesting. So when do you come out to be like, now let me make this publicly, that I am HIV positive?
HIV positive?
And what did it take to do that?
It took me 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
To declare my public status.
To decide that? Oh.
When I got the HIV test at Bowman House, the counselor looked at my collar and said, "Man of God, what are you going to do? Even you?" And that was really very provocative. I had heard about AIDS, I had thought about it, but that was the first time it's becoming personal. And I looked at the counselor, I said, "Well, you're asking what I will do. I did not come here with a strategic plan. I didn't know you will tell me I'm positive. But now that you tell me, the God who created me, I'm going to pray that He gives me guidance on what to do."
But Canon, how did it feel first in the first place when you tested and found out that you're positive? Before we continue in declaration.
It feels tough. Of course, it feels tough, except that I was ready for it. Okay. Yeah, because unlike these days where you go and you are given your results after a few minutes or a few hours, for us it took 2 weeks. Okay. So in that process, you would be really processing. And because already I have had reports that my wife died of an AIDS-related pneumonia, you are saying, yeah, I could also be positive. And you look at your life and you look at the risk factors, and they are all there. The sexual route, it's a risk factor. The blood route is a risk factor. I have 4 pints of blood in me that were given by someone who is already dead and the wife is dead. The injections route, I am a factor. We are the Amini boys who were being given injections by nurses who had only 10 needles for about 50 patients. So they would only change a needle when this man, you are killing me, and then he removes. So I was already prepared to say I could be positive. So when he gave me the results, actually he asked me, would you want a confirmatory test? And I said, no. From the risk factors, I was there. And like these days, if you marry and you have not tested for HIV, and then later on they tell you are positive. I mean, the sexual route they say is the biggest route, but also in my case, even before marriage, I had those risk factors. Yeah, so the challenge was not on whether I'm positive. The challenge was on how am I going to handle.
Okay. And how about people around you? How did they take in this?
They were shocked.
Okay.
They were shocked. Remember, I am disclosing my my HIV status publicly, but they had never seen a religious leader, a priest, saying that. And at that time, I was actually being public. I was lecturing reverends at Bishop Tucker College. I told you I did my first degree in education. My second was in theology. And when I got a first class in theology, the administration said I should remain, and I upgrade my studies to a PhD, and then I'm full-time. So all that is happening when I'm already lecturing at Bishop Tucker College. And so people are shocked. I remember I entered the staff room and I told them, and you could hear a pin drop. You could hear a pin drop. And I said, pray for me because this is tough. And then I went to my theology class. They were wonderful. At first they were shocked, but one of them, who is now the retired bishop of northern Uganda, the Right Reverend Johnson Gakumba, was in my class, together with the Right Reverend Elia Ruzinda Powell, together with my current Bishop of Namirembe, the Right Reverend Wilberforce Chitioduwarira. They were in my class, and Johnson said, friends, our lecturer has told us tough news. Let's pray for him. And it's that prayer that changed my life.
Wow.
That made me, stand to say, yes, I can face this now that I have friends in my class.
Wow.
Yeah, the other one is my family from my late wife, Eunice and Bishop Eliphaz. By then they were canon. It was canon and Mrs. Married. They really also responded very well. I remember Eunice saying, we loved you before HIV. And HIV won't change our love for you. And viewers, that was a very special message. When stigma comes, in the family, that people blame, you killed our child, our daughter, or the people of the side of the daughter blame, you killed our son, But Eunice looked me in the face and said, we will continue to love you. Up to now, they have kept the promise.
Wow.
So love, for me, I look at that and I see people who die and who live are defined by how much love they get.
Wow.
How much love they get from the family, from the place of work. You can see the place of work welcomed me. The family welcomed me. Now, when you get the medical service and you get where to get treatment, you can live long. So love defines in places where the families are at risk, the communities are at risk, the countries are at risk. It is love that determines how your response is going to be. Wow. The love you give people and the love they give you. That interaction is critical in the AIDS response.
It is such an interesting story here, of course, with Reverend Canon Gideon. What an encouraging story it is. But of course, we return. And when we return, how does he cope up? How does he deal after declaring the such a stage?